Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David, and this episode is for UFC 317, Topuria V Oliveira. This is going to be a quick episode. Nothing crazy to talk about. Obviously, this is like 3 weeks late, so it doesn't even, the feeling is gone. But let's just get through with it. Overall, the fight card was pretty awesome. Pretty amazing fight card. No controversy at all, just small niggles in the scorecard. Let's start off with Price versus Smith. 10-9 to Price 10-9 to Smith in the first round. Smith won by submission in the second round. In the first round, Smith outstruck Price on the feet. He had a takedown with about 2+ minutes of ground and pound. On the feet, he outstruck him by about 6+ strikes. Nothing serious. It was really fast paced. And because of that, one judge scored it a 10-8, David Letheby. To me, that's just an unnecessary 10-8. There's just no need for that 10-8. Junichiro Kamijo and Saul Diamata had a 10-9 for Smith. That's in my opinion, the correct scorecard for that first round. But beyond that, the overall point of this fight is that this is the first fight where Smith had a little bit of an issue in the sense that he will be tested, and in a way, he's kind of like a first-round fighter. I believe there's another fight on this card where... Oh, no, I'm thinking ahead. That's a different card, but Smith seems to be a first-round fighter where he just uses his entire gas tank, and when the later rounds come, he slows down a bit, and I'm assuming he'll have a lot... I'm not even assuming. I know for a fact he will have a much more difficult fight coming up. Now that he's beaten Nico Price, he's going to get a tougher test. But that's the only thing I wanted to highlight on that card. Let's go to the next honorable mention, Talbott versus Lima. This fight, incredible comeback for Talbott. I'm just mad at the way they scored this because this is a constant thing. This is like the 17th week in a row where, for some reason, nobody can score these correctly. For some reason, we're just scoring fights in a way that make no sense. I had this 30-27 for Talbot. That's the correct scorecard. 30-27 for Talbot. I gave all the rounds to Talbot. Well, let's start off with the first round, okay? In the first round, Lima had 2 takedowns, okay? Talbot had a reversal with some ground and pound, and he outstruck Lima on the feet and on the ground. Here's the interesting bit. Lima had 2 takedowns and had little to no ground and pound with these takedowns. Talbot got up relatively quickly, and on one of the takedowns, he stayed down a bit, all right? There was some time that he kind of stayed on the ground. And what I'm trying to point out here is that the ground time that Lima had is irrelevant. It's so irrelevant. I don't know how to really explain it. It's so irrelevant due to the fact that Lima was practically invisible on the ground. Very little ground and pound. I want to say no ground and pound, but my memory is kind of fuzzy at the moment. Little to no ground and pound. And not only did Talbot outstrike Lima on the feet, he outstruck him. He had a significant amount of ground and pound that for some reason after the first round, it just seems as though the commentary and the way, you have that thing where you watch a fight and you just know that because a guy got takedowns, he's going to win the round. I had that feeling that, is he down? Is he down a round? And he was. But then when you go to the second round, Lima had a takedown as well. This time he did nothing with it. Talbot had 2 takedowns of his own, and he had a reversal with ground and pound and outstruck Lima on the feet. On the feet, he outstruck him by about 5 strikes, but he had some ground and pound as well. This was 100% Talbot's round. You go to the third round where Lima had a takedown. Again, nothing with the takedown. Talbot outstruck Lima on the feet, and he also had a reversal with ground and pound. This entire fight belonged to Peyton Talbot. You go to the judges' scorecards, and they gave all 3 judges, Ben Cartledge, Chris Lee, and Ron McCarthy, honorable mention. I think it's an honorable mention. All 3, 29-28 to Talbot. They gave the first round to Lima. I think it's just bad given the fact that Talbot outstruck him all over. And because he was on his back for maybe like a minute, they decided, okay, They somehow thought in their head that it was even on the feet, even on strikes, and that because Lima got a takedown, it's his round, when that just wasn't the case. That just wasn't the case. So there you have it on that one. Go to the next honorable mention. The fight of the night. One of the biggest fights of the year. Royval versus Van. This fight was interesting, and it's one of those fights that, you can debate, right? You can debate, and I'll get into it. It's 29-28 to Van on my scorecard. First round for Van, second round for Royval, third round for Van. You go to the first round, okay? It starts off with Royval outstriking Van, okay? Royval is outstriking Van, and it's from just little shots here and there, shots to the leg, shots to the body, shots to the head, and he's slowly getting ahead of Van, and Van just starts to unleash combinations, and slowly he gets back on strikes, and then he just supersedes Royval on strikes. He starts to piece up Royval. By the end of the round, he's outstriking Royval by about 12 strikes, okay? He wins the round pretty convincingly. This is where we get into weird territory. From the second round and third round, from the second round onward, we get an insane amount of output by both fighters, especially from Royval. In the second round, Royval outstruck Van. I don't have the strikes for you. And here's the problem. I can confidently say that he outstruck him. Here's my issue, is that from the second round on, Royval is just pumping out straight shots. Half of those straight shots are landing on Van. The other half are just kind of put out there. They're not really significant strikes. And while I can confidently say that he definitely outstrikes Van, you can weirdly, and I didn't put a close marker here because I personally don't think it was close, but a judge gave the second round to Joshua Van, and the reason I think he did that is because while half of the shots from Royval are hitting Van, almost all of Van's shots are hitting Royval, and it becomes a weird thing where we're looking at volume versus power, and I hate that argument. I've always hated that argument because in most cases, when that argument is brought up, it's brought up when strikes aren't this much, right? The output from both fighters are a lot here. So I think you can kind of make an argument here of Van put out a lot, and most of his strikes were hitting. Royval put out a lot, and a significant portion of his strikes were hitting, and a lot of them weren't. A lot of them weren't hitting the way the other strikes were. So how do you really measure that? Beyond that, I think you still give the round to Royval. We go to the third round where it's really close. And I'm saying it's close because both guys are kind of landing at the same time. And Royval's doing that thing where half of his strikes are hitting, the other half of his strikes are not hitting. And so we get down to this happens throughout the entire round where Royval is kind of outstriking Van. In a way, before the ending happens, it's close, but in my head, I'm leaning towards Royval. I'm thinking Royval is winning this round. But in the other part of my head, I'm still thinking it's close because Van is also unleashing strikes, and they're heavier. So who are the judges going to give it to? We know that Clemens Warner gave the second round to Joshua Van. Would he have given the last round to Joshua Van if it had ended without the drop? So the ending is basically in the last 10 seconds, Van just drops Royval, and that wins Van the round. Because before the drop happens, in my head, I'm thinking, I think Royval wins this, just based off of the output and based off of what he's landing on Van. But Van is throwing back. But in my head, it was just really confusing. It was just so much going on that I thought to myself, I'd give the edge to Royval. And then when the drop happens, I knew for a fact, you know what? Never mind. The round goes to Joshua Van. It's really interesting how this whole thing turns out. Real quick, the judges' scorecards: 29-28. Mike Bell, Ron McCarthy, their scorecards reflect mine, and then Clemens Warner 30-27 to Joshua Van. for the first time in a while, I can't give an honorable mention here for Clemens Warner, because really you can make an argument that Joshua won the second round, even though I don't think he did. So there you have it on that. Really interesting thing about Joshua Van, though, is that they brought him in the cage, right? Two weird things tonight. They brought them in the cage to set up like the next fight. And it's funny because obviously this fight is, I'm recording this July 22nd, right? So I'm very late. And knowing what I know now, I know that there's a clip. Speaking of the lightweight belt, there's a clip of Dana saying, why did we bring Patty in? What was the purpose of the Patty one? You can tell they don't want to set that one up yet, right? And then specifically speaking about the flyweight division, Joshua Van fought the number one contender on a few weeks' notice. So arguments of he skipped the line are kind of mute. He fought the number one guy, right? So the next thing for him is either a title shot or a fight night of some sort or a pay-per-view five rounder. And the reason why I bring up 5 rounders is because he still hasn't fought 5 rounds yet in the UFC. And not to say he was getting tired. Obviously, the output was insane from both of them, so disregard that. But he hasn't fought 5 rounds yet. He has still not fought 5 rounds yet. And if his first 5-round fight in the UFC is going to be for a championship, this flyweight division is moving fast. And he's going to fight Pantoja, who won on the next fight. It's going to be an interesting one because if you look at the striking goes straight to Van. The grappling goes to Pantoja, obviously, but Van has really improved on his grappling. Has he improved so much that he's going to deter Pantoja the entire 5 rounds? Can he even knock out Pantoja? Pantoja's chin is like Vittoria's chin. So, who knows? Really, who knows? Other than that, Pantoja wins by submission in the 3rd round. Topuria knocks out Oliveira. It's sad if you're an Oliveira fan. That's pretty much it. Thank you all for listening, and God bless.